Welcome to another episode of the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast. Today, Emily and I are going to talk about how we run business whilst having babies and being able to, I'm not going to say juggle, but manage the both of them without being completely torn down with guilt. We have talked about this on the daily for the last 7 years. So I cannot wait to share with you all our learnings since becoming mums.
We are child development obsessed, business besties, and mums, and we're here to spill all our secrets.
We have a combined 30 years experience working with children, and each episode we will bring you up-to-date research and evidence-based strategies to set your children up to thrive.
I'm Lizzy Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist,
and this is the Move.Talk.Thrive podcast.
All right, this is a big one. Well, it's not a big one. It's just I feel like this is like an easy, like just flow conversation like we normally talk, right?
It's a lot about personal, like it's about our lives, talking about our children, talking about how we manage it all. A lot of people are like, how do you do it all? You always seem to be everywhere at once, on your socials. You seem to be then present with your children. You seem to be, living a very full life. So it's a question I get asked it a lot. Do you get asked a lot?
Yeah, well, I definitely get comments about how much I am doing. And interestingly, I recently was with Lorraine Murphy, my mentor. I was with her Bold Darling group, and she asked us one of the toughest times in business. And I reflected that that was when I had Flynn, my first bub. I found that transition so extremely difficult because I just couldn't imagine, you can't really imagine motherhood until you're in it. And I made some pretty big errors in that transition with work. So I have been reflecting on it quite a lot recently. And I also, she was asking me about how I manage my energy and burnout. And one of those things was aligned to living a life aligned to my values, which is also kind of tied up into this. So it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently.
I think when you are in the stages that we're in, when the children are quite young, you're forced to think about it a lot because the children and their lives and their development, they're changing quite rapidly, which we know with children with their development. But also, work is changing quite rapidly as well. When you're in the startup phase, there's lots of different things happening at Speak About and with my other things that I do. So I think you're forced to think about it all the time because you're like, things aren't staying the same. Things are not static. They're moving and you're always needing to adjust because you're trying to avoid like that friction, I guess. And you're trying to avoid, you're trying to balance it well. And I remember actually, you mentioned Lorraine. She said that she doesn't like to call it a juggle. What does she call it?
A blend.
A blend. I loved that when I heard that. She's like, and so like automatically we can say, okay, if you're a mum out there, if you've got a business, even it's actually not even like if you just got multiple balls that you're juggling in the air, or not juggling, you're trying to put it together and blend your life. So I liked that concept instead of juggling, because juggling to me is like you hold something while everything else is up in the air and you don't know what's happening with that. And then you'll then take another ball and like it doesn't really sit well. It never sat well with me until I heard Lorraine say, oh, blend. And I was like, yes, it's about blending your life. And then I love what you've just said with your values, putting it together. Yeah.
Honestly, that has been such a huge component of me getting through or surviving the last 12 months. So I am, I guess scaling in a sense my businesses and I've been able to do that without feeling or falling into resentment. And I think that comes down to having some boundaries knowing how I feel, knowing my values, and then making sure that I'm living to those. And that's something that I think you do as well.
I try. I think you get to a point where you're like, if I'm not feeling good in myself, if I'm not feeling present, if I'm not feeling like I'm doing a good job with my children, then you go, okay, something's not working. We need to change that. And you and I have we've had to change those things quite quickly, because
Yeah.
otherwise we were just like, what's the point of having a business if our children are sacrificed for work, or our family is compromised because of work? Like, it doesn't make work then meaningful or
Yeah.
good anymore. So you have to get to that point of going, okay, my work is good and my family is good. And that looks different for every single person, based on your capacity, based on the support you have around you, where you live. Like, it's all really different. I think that's one thing that I've learned. You go and you hear, other people speak about being a mom and working, and that work-life balance, I guess. And, you know, then you try and take that on. But I've found the most helpful thing for me is taking on little bits of what everyone else says, and then making it
Mm.
into what works for me and my family, because our family is totally different to next door's family and to your family. And that's because we have different values, and that's being human. Everyone has their own values, but just everyone's always at different stages. Your children are completely different to the next door neighbor's children. And what your children need from you, they're little humans. No two children are the same. And so it's not just trying to fit into a mold of what other people say you should do, but it's then going one step further and going, how does that work for us? And then having that discussion with your partner to go, how does this work for us? What do we want from our life? And it's asking those questions
Mm.
continuously, I think, that gets you to that point, right?
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to like go along without thinking about it and just feeling pretty average.
Mm. So just
Yeah, I feel like it's something you really need to consider consciously.
if you want to do it well, which we both want to, we don't want our businesses to suffer because we have families, and we don't want our families to suffer because we have businesses or work, I guess. Yes, you have to think. I want to take it back though. I want to take it back to just maybe talk about our experiences of when we became mums, and
Mm.
how we did that. Because I mean, is my youngest now, Isabel's 2.5. So that was 2.5 years ago, and Evie's almost 5. So I've been in this zone for 5 years. You've been in this zone for even longer.
Yeah,
But
7.5.
maybe we'd like to speak to the first time mum. Like, you've had your
Mm.
career, you've been working 5 days a week, and you're about to have a baby, or you're thinking about having a baby. Maybe we'll share a little bit of our experiences. Obviously, we have businesses, so that's a different if you're an employee, but we can also shed light on that because we have
Yeah,
people
I
who have
think
babies in our team.
I think the biggest thing um to really consider or keep in mind is just the epic transition that it is becoming a mum.
Mm,
Like, I think that we really undercharge that transition as a society. I
mm,
think you're fundamentally transitioning into a different person with different responsibilities, and it nothing kind of quite prepares you. And I think that that birthing experience is that transition. Like, it's the only thing you get to the other side of giving birth, and you're like, oh my goodness, like that is so much. There's some, it's just so much bigger than what you can anticipate, I think.
mm.
I
Nothing
remember,
to prepare you. No amount of
no,
books that you read, like
because you can't,
stories people
you're
tell you.
not there. You're
Mm,
just not like, you're not there emotionally, physically.
mm,
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I say to my team, so I just had someone last year go on maternity leave, and she was like, "Oh, just take 3, 6 months max." And I'm like, "Don't say that. Don't say that,
mm,
because you will change your mind. You may
mm,
change your mind, and that's totally fine. Like, you just, you
mm,
keep me posted, because that may change, because time goes really quick, and And I really think, you know, in a sense, your values change when you go through that experience.
Yeah, because you're a mum. You weren't a mum and then you're a mum. I
Mm.
said the same thing this morning. One of our girls is about to go off on maternity leave, and she said the same thing. And I'm like, that's great if you come, like, you know, not if you come back, but
Yep.
just be aware that your expectations now will be totally different because your life will be totally different. You will be in a completely different stage of even making decisions.
Mm.
So I think that's one thing that I I mean, when I had Evie, because that was 20, I was pregnant 2019. Um, I set the business up, so speak about up to basically function for the most part without me for a short period of time because I just wasn't sure what it was like, what it's going to look like. So I think I did that well, but then not well at the same time because you just don't know what you don't know, right? But I think I
Mm.
did clear space for Evie. Isabel was a different story. I didn't clear space for her, and it's interesting
Mm.
how you were the opposite. I think Lizzy,
Yeah.
didn't weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Total opposite.
it's
So interesting.
interesting how you do things for one child but then not the other, and yeah, this is what we mean. This is what we're talking about with different seasons in life. But with Evie, I sort of I worked really hard that year in the business to try and systemize everything because I was like, I did hear a story of another girl that we were friends with in business. And she said that she was literally in labor on the bed, like sending an email and on the phone being like giving decisions to the admin. And that always was in the back of my mind. And I was like, I cannot be that person. Like, not I don't want to be, but I was like, I can't be that person. I will literally lose my mind if that's me. So I worked really hard that year. We moved to the clinic that year. So I remember being very heavily pregnant and like moving tables around and getting the admin desk sorted and building our Hobartfield clinic. And I think we built that clinic. And then I had a couple of weeks in there and then I was off to have Evie. And well, I had Bree, who was taking over from me. So she'd been with me from the start. So she knew the business in and out. But I sort of was just like, I don't know what my life's going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back to work. I don't know if I'm going to have a screaming baby or a sleeping baby. I have no idea. So I think I did that well with Isabel, like clear the space with her for her because it was so unknown. And then that did work well because then when COVID hit. So thank goodness I had cleared that
Mm.
space because even if I wanted to go back in, I couldn't have. Um, and then when I had Isabel, oh, sorry, when I had Evie, I thought, well, maybe I might go back into work. But then COVID hit, and I thought, well, I can't take a newborn baby back into work. I can't go
Mm.
and be in a clinic with children who, may have COVID and then I give it to a newborn baby. So that then did restrict me a little bit in that first, I would say, 2 years of having Evie. Um, but I look back now, I think that was quite a positive thing because that was totally different experience with Isabel. What
Mm.
was your experience with Flinny?
So with Flinny, I mean, I just think I tried to put all the systems in place and I had people to step in for me. I mean, in a way, I was lucky because I'd had the stroke in 2015. So I didn't work for a good 6 months. So I had people in place for me beforehand. And I didn't actually return to full-time work because I had 6 months off and then I was pregnant. So I didn't go back to full-time work. So I had people step in. So that was actually really good. What I did do that was not ideal was I changed the structure of my business. So I think, and my advice to people is don't make big changes beforehand before having a baby because you just don't know what those changes are going to, I mean, business is a bit unpredictable as it is, let alone when you're changing, big changes, because everything always, requires more time than what you can anticipate. And then with Flinny, I found he was actually a really good sleeper. So feeding was an issue. I had a lot of issues with feeding with him. So that caused, and it's just so all consuming, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
and you don't understand that. Like, it was all I could think about, talk about was breastfeeding with him because it was not easy, but he
Mm.
did sleep a lot. So that was almost my undoing because I was like, oh, I've got so much time. I can, take meetings and I can do all this stuff. And then it was like he was a really good baby, but then if he happened to wake up when I had
Mm.
a meeting, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like I couldn't kind of manage both. And then I ended up having to go back to work fairly early with him, which is why I prepared myself better with Marley. I was like, I'm not taking any meetings at specific times. You guys can all contact me whenever you need me, but I'm not, I'll respond, I'll get back to you when when it suits me. So I kind of didn't have any structure to my routine with Marley, whereas with Flynn, I tried to maintain structure because he just fell into a routine really nicely. And yeah, and I guess I was able to, but it just meant that I went back to work probably a little bit too early. And then I ended up getting kind of sucked back into it and had him in care fairly early. And that was not aligned to my values and I resented it.
Mm.
So I really struggled with that and then promised myself I wouldn't do it with Marley. And I didn't. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've seen a lot as well. And I experienced that myself. You have like the very early newborn stage where it's like,
Mm.
0 to 6 weeks, and you think, oh, it's a bit chaotic. You start, you're basically reduced, you're a profession, you're a competent adult and you're reduced down to a dummy because you're like, I need to question everything. Can I get in and out of the car? Can I go to the shops? How do I get fuel in my car? How do I go grocery shopping? What clothes am I wearing today? Because I need to breastfeed. Oh my gosh, I can't go here because I need to feed the baby at this time. So that's like, that takes up all of your mental capacity in those first like 2 months. But then, there is a lot of changes with the baby. Like you hear about the 4 month sleep regression, which happens with some people, doesn't happen with others.
Mm.
And you sort of go then, like I think around 4 or 5 months, you start to feel on top of things a little bit, like it's becoming a bit more normal. And so then, yeah, I've noticed like a lot of people, and myself included, then we go, oh, I think we can actually do a bit more. I think we can actually go back to work or whatnot, but not really thinking through the long-term ramifications of the commitment of that. I think that's where you can get a bit stuck because you think, oh, I can do it right now. I can do it for today. But this is the thing with babies, every day is a new day. And so it works really well if you've had a really hard day that day because you go, okay, tomorrow's a new day. It doesn't mean we're going to have a bad day tomorrow. They're going to be totally different. They might wake up happy and smiling. But it also works in the reverse because if you make a long term commitment to go, all right, I'm going to go back to work, or I'm going to say yes to that casual day next week or whatever, your baby can be completely different at that time. And then
Yeah.
that can be going against you. So I think what you said before about making long-term decisions in your business is not good, like when you've had a baby. But I also think it's the same way personally. Don't make long-term decisions about work when your baby is still in that 12-month period, I think. And that's traditionally why in Australia we have 12-month maternity leave, because it is like, even though you have periods in there where you feel okay, it really is very up and down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Full of twists and
Yeah.
turns.
So many, it just evolves, doesn't it, into different stages
Yeah.
of whatever is going on. And nothing can prepare you for what that's going to be like because it's different from baby to baby as well. Like you can't,
Every baby's very different.
yeah, you can't predict it. Like with Flinny, I didn't get in the car for 6 weeks because I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out how to put the pram in the car. So I was walking everywhere. And then also because we were having breastfeeding issues, I didn't want to feed him out.
Mm.
So, and then I also had mastitis 12 times in 6 months. So every other week I was on antibiotics. So I'd have it just it was not. So for me, it got easier at 6 months because I stopped breastfeeding with him, I was just like, right, I can't, this is not working for us. And that was such a big decision too. I remember, that was huge. So, but once I kind of made the decision and I went with it, it was transformative
Yeah.
in terms because I was healthy. I
Yeah.
wasn't really sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that it's you've got to be really flexible with yourself, and you need to be compassionate to yourself and just let yourself experience it without having to make any decisions. I think there's so much pressure these days on us to return to work because of the cost of living or just career demands. And I think, obviously when you've got your own business, that's fairly high as well because business doesn't stop for babies.
No.
Like I remember with Marley, I was like, right, I am not working for the next 12 months. I considered actually shutting down Kids Heart Pilates. And then I had someone resign while I was in labor. And I was like, oh my gosh, seriously, did they not know I'm having a baby? And they don't actually, it's not, they don't really, they're not considering you. They're doing something that's right for them, which is totally fine. But that's, I think that's a whole nother podcast, isn't it?
Business never stops is the bottom line there.
Yeah. So you can set, you can plan and set it up as much as like as well as you can, and you still don't know if it will go to plan. And I think, you and I have both got two kids and it went well with one and more challenging with the other. So maybe 50% of the time it goes to plan.
Yeah. With Isabel, it was a totally different story. I think that was because I don't know, maybe just second baby. I thought, oh, I got this. I don't even know. You just not as planned. Maybe because I already had a first baby, I was so busy, I didn't really have that time to stop and reflect. And then, obviously running the business as well. I think at that time I had definitely started my second business, the Successful Speechy Academy, with the online coaching. So it's definitely more busy. But with Isabella, I just remember pretty much having to come back into work, and like this is the blessing and the curse of being a business owner. The buck stops with you. So if something's not going to happen, you've either got to make it happen or it doesn't happen. And then you've got 16 people there going, why hasn't this happened? And so I was running a retreat and Isabel was 3 months old. I think I'd had like no sleep. I had major breastfeeding issues, and I remember like running the whole retreat, and like in between sessions, I would then be going into the room and pumping because I couldn't breastfeed. It was too painful at that time. And I was pumping, and I'd had 2 hours sleep, and you run this retreat for 2 days, and you've got to be at the peak of your game. And it is what it is. Like, you don't tend to share those things as they're happening because you've also got a vision that you're there for your team. But yeah, super difficult, super intense on your body. And it does take a toll. And I remember just being completely burnt out after that, as any new mother would be with two children. But you've got to learn from your mistakes. And I was like, I didn't plan this well enough. A few things didn't go, as we're saying, a few things didn't go to plan. I thought I had the support there and I didn't have the support. A few things changed in the business and you can't foresee that. And so you've just got to pick it up. So, I mean, we've both, like, in sharing this, we've both had our fair of time. What am I saying? We've both had our share of times where it's gone really well and then not so well. We've both had to have that resilience and that character development to pick ourselves up and keep going and sort of take seasons as they are, like whether it's thriving, surviving, navigating. We'll just take it forward now because we both have, we classify ourselves as a little bit more seasons, but we're not. Like, there's parents out there that have got children who are way older than ours and we still are so far behind.
Well, we're just at a different stage.
Yes. And I mean, I think people keep telling me with children, it doesn't necessarily get easier, but it does get a bit less intense. Like when they're fully dependent on you in those first, like I would say Isabel's still in nappies, like to first 3 to 4 years, they're fully dependent on you for everything, like getting them dressed, getting them to bed, showered, fed, changing nappies. Once they get a little bit older, they're not as dependent, but it doesn't mean it's any easier. It's just a different vibe, a different dynamic, right?
Well, I hate to break this to you because my sister is 5 years older than me and has teenage children. And most of my friends, I had babies a lot later than my friends. And so they have got teenage children and they said it gets so much harder.
Yeah.
So I hate to break that to
It's
you, but
as they're growing into their person, right?
well, yeah. And so what happens is it's physically hard when you've got younger kids because you have to physically be there. You can't obviously leave them at home. You have to physically get them dressed and change nappies, and, they're waking up at nighttime. And then when they become bigger and they say little people, little problems, big people, big problems. So,
Mm.
what I hear is that, then you're dealing with, bullying and
Mm.
anxiety and mental health and, like some pretty heavy stuff. And, on top of all of that, your relationship evolving the whole time. So I think we can only really talk about what we're going through at the moment. But I've definitely heard it gets harder. So,
Mm.
and I must say, like, what I have felt like in regards to having my own business and having a family is that it's not, I don't have more freedom. I've probably got less freedom. So I'm always on. And when it hits the fan in business, I have to be there, regardless of whether we've got a holiday planned, regardless of, of whatever's going on. So I spoke recently on my social media about moving clinics halfway through the year, and the real estate would not extend. Like, they basically made it that I had to move out in this week, which was the 1 week that I was on family holiday. And I was like, I'm actually away that week. Can we do it afterwards? And they were like, no. And so I just think, it's business. Like, it's not it's not going to conform to what you want. But what I do think is that it gives you flexibility. So I don't know what percentage of times, but I can, stay home and work from home if my kids are sick. I can, I mean, everyone can do that, obviously, but I can make that call without having to answer to anyone. I can go and watch athletics day. I can go to swimming carnivals. I can go to lunch with my girlfriends. I don't have to. I've got more flexibility, I think, in
So then
determining.
you might work at night
Yeah, but you
or
have
in the
to.
morning.
Yeah, that's right, or all the time. Like, it's about, you have to get done what you have to get done, but you can choose when you get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Most of the time. I love to talk about some of the systems that we have in place now that enables us to do what we're doing now. I get this question a lot. How do I do what I'm doing? So,
Mhm.
and I think you're really good at this as well, actually. You're probably way better than me.
What's that?
Just managing like your house system. So let's
Oh,
talk about it,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we've got house systems. So
Yeah.
we each both have a nanny. Depends what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So we like to have house help as well. So we like to have help when we're on the days that we're working. We have meals cooked by somebody else. We give instructions for that. We have the house clean, the washing done. So we're not trying to do two jobs at once. We're not working and then having all of our house stuff. So that's one practical way that we both do, right?
Yeah, I think it's about outsourcing the things that you can outsource. And one of those things for me is outsourcing the laundry and the tidying up, and not outsourcing the child care as much. So I have Brookie, she's amazing. I love her. She comes in and helps us 4 days a week, and she will help me with different home tasks. She does the grocery shopping, although I must say I've started to do a little bit more grocery shopping because I needed to overhaul my kids' eating habits. And I found that when I do that myself, that's actually improved. It's like had this flow-on effect. So that's been really interesting because I outsourced that and I
Mm.
lost interest in cooking, and food. And so now I've kind of taken that back on, but I can just shuffle it around. So she does the laundry, she does our sheets on Mondays and our bath towels, and she, will run to the shop and get things. She'll do drop off and pick up a couple of days a week, but she'll also, and this is what I mean about living aligned to your values. She will look after Marley so I can have one-on-one time with Flinny, and she'll look after Flinny so I can have one-on-one time with Marley. So yeah, I think it's about looking at all the things that you're doing across home and work, and working out what ones you can outsource, and in mind of your values, I think.
Yeah, and that comes back to your mindset, like not going like I'm the best at everything, because you've just got to let things go. Because when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. And the main thing, I guess, for both of us is that we don't want to be saying no to time with our children or no to being there for our children. So we've had to say no to a lot of other things, even things with work. Even though we both are working, it's at a very different capacity to what it was before we had children. Even though it's flexible, there are lots of things that we've had to delegate out at work, lots of different tasks, and just sort of be okay with sometimes not being across it. We're across things, but not across everything to the level of detail. But you have supports in place and things like that. But yeah, the biggest thing for me is the delegation of the home, but also having 2 virtual assistants that pretty much work for me full time. So when I'm not working, I have thought about how I work, and I sort of have systemized a lot of my tasks, but then I also then delegate a lot of things. So I won't spend time in a lot of the detailed tasks, which before kids I might have. So that might look like I don't touch Canva anymore. So, all my things that are very pretty, I have a wonderful VA who does that for me to make it all pretty. And so
I hate Canva. I hate that stuff. It just takes me like hours to get it right.
It does. And so, it's better giving it to someone who's really good at it. I also have someone who's on my emails and who's then responding back and doing all of my admin, a lot of my admin for my online academy. So it's things like that that can be delegated, the things that you do over and over again. Yes, you could probably do them well, but someone is going to do them just as good. And then you can have time with your children or whatever that is, time at home. So for me, it's definitely been having VAs full-time working for me. And then we have an organizational chart. We use Trello. Liz uses Asana. So we have our tools that we use as well, like for our house. We have me and my husband use FamCal, which is a joint calendar. So we have systems like that. We have support people in place. And then we sort of are trying to align things with our values and make decisions around that. I think probably the most trickiest thing to navigate is when push comes to shove. Like we've said, you can plan everything out, but then at the end of the day, something might happen and you're like, well, I'm needed at work and I'm needed with the family. So what do you do, Lizzy, in those situations? It's hard, right? Like we're trying to make the point, it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, and you've got responsibilities in both areas, right? But I think you share responsibilities in both areas. So I think it's really about looking at who can help you in both areas, and what you can, what works really. Like obviously, if I have got something going on at work and I really need to be there, then I have my beautiful husband that has equal responsibility to look after the children. And so we've got a really good balanced share load with the kids. He is really helpful. And if I say, oh, I can't do drop off, he usually is quite happy about doing that, unless I don't give him any notice. Which also sometimes happens. But again, it's that shared calendar and making sure that I think communication is like such a big one, isn't it? But I think, I think we're pretty good in terms of sharing the load, and then having Brooke there for when we need help that, it's appropriate to get her to help with. And then it's about having the support at work as well, and looking at who can step in and help you when necessary, and sometimes that's going to have to be you. Sometimes it is, and then it's it's just like a little bit of I don't know, balance in terms of, okay, what support have I got where, and how am I going to use it, and how can I use it in this time?
Mm.
Which I've never really. I think for me, another really hard one was when I was pulled into work. We had a big work situation, and it was when Flynn started school, and I just wanted to be there, and I felt like I was there, but I was rushing and I was exhausted, and that was just a situation where I couldn't quite control it. So I think it's again just coming back to self-compassion and knowing that they're going to be okay as well. Like he was fine. It was really me getting upset about it. So I think we're all doing our best.
Mm. Mm. And so remember that if you're a mum or thinking about having a child and you're an employee or have a business, you know, you've got to be having that compassion with yourself and going, all right, maybe it didn't work today. Let's reevaluate and let's try and fix it so it doesn't happen next time. And like, let's just try and keep moving forward in the best way that we can.
Mm.
And I think that's a big myth as well. Like a lot of the time we look around and think, oh, all these mums are doing it really well. We can look on social media and be like, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling like I'm the one that's not got things, the way that they need to be, or whatever that, like, who knows what things need to be, right? But so it's just remembering again to take it back to your family, what works for you and your lifestyle with your values and what you want to achieve, and then making sure that that works for you rather than just looking out at the masses.
Mm.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, we hope that this discussion, it's been a little bit more of a personal one to what we would normally do with our clinical chats, but we know that this is a really big topic, particularly with women. Most speeches are women, probably 50-50 for EPs, but we know it's a really big topic. It's probably not spoken about a lot.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, I had a question that I forgot I was going to ask you. Do you think that it's possible to have a business and have children without feeling guilty?
No,
Mm.
no. Yeah, we haven't really touched about mum guilt. That's a whole nother podcast
Yeah.
in itself. Um, I think feelings are feelings and they're going to come.
Yeah.
And I think I have learned to use my mum guilt as a compass, as my conscience
Mm.
to guide me into making the right decisions. Yeah, to more use that as a steering post for me rather than letting it weigh me down and condemn me and be really negative. Yeah.
That's how I use resentment. Like if I'm starting to feel resentful, I'm like, wait, something's not right here. I'm out of alignment with my values. And that's what I did, like big thing that I did last year
Hmm.
was that I was just like, I'm feeling resentful. What is off here? So like I love that compass.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where the power of our feelings is, and having awareness and control over our feelings, because we're not our emotions, but our feelings and our emotions are really important. And so it's looking at what purpose they serve and how they're serving us and how we can, yeah, like use them and build on them or change them. Feelings can be changed.
Mm.
And yeah, like learn and grow with that. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have a whole different story. Give us like another year and we'll have a whole nother story about business and mum life. But we hope that this has been encouraging for you if you're in this stage or coming out of this stage, or even just going, oh, that was me like a couple of years ago. We hope it's been really encouraging for you. And share this with another mum or someone who's maybe thinking about having children, or, just thinking about even opening their own business or whatnot. The more that we can talk about these things and, you know, normalize that life's not easy and normalize that things aren't easy, then it sort of like becomes easier because we can adjust our expectations. So, yeah, we hope you've enjoyed this. And until next time, we hope you have a lovely week or a lovely day, whatever you're doing, and we'll talk to you soon.